The snow never stopped falling in the old mountain village of Ron. Every rooftop, every path, every wooden fence was buried under soft white. People moved fast through the cold, their heads down, avoiding the center square where the cage stood. Inside that cage was a girl who didn't look like them. Her skin had a faint violet glow, smooth like crystal ice. Her silver-white hair flowed over her shoulders, tangled from wind and time. And her eyes, bright and sharp, watched everything. They called her a monster. Villagers whispered she came from the dark skies, falling in fire. Some said she had magic. Others said she ate men, but none dared go near. They just threw food scraps from far away and walked off. The truth was, no one knew her name. No one tried to speak to her. No one asked why she was here. They only knew that weeks ago, after a bright explosion in the forest, the guards had returned, dragging her in chains. Since then, she had been locked in the iron cage at the edge of the market square, a warning to anyone who asked too many questions. But that morning, someone new arrived. He wore a heavy cloak and carried a simple pack. His face was human, tired, kind, and not from the village. He had scars on his hands, dirt under his nails, and a look in his eyes like he had seen too much. He stood still for a long time in front of the cage. The villagers watched him from behind their windows. No one warned him. They just waited. Inside the cage, the alien woman stayed kneeling. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She only stared at him. Snow gathered in her hair and on her shoulders. "You're freezing," the man finally said. His voice wasn't loud, but she blinked for the first time in minutes. He knelt in the snow, removing his outer cloak, and carefully pushed it through the bars. The villagers gasped. The girl slowly took the cloak, her fingers shaking. It was the first warmth she had felt in days. Her lips parted, but no words came. "Can you understand me?" he asked. She nodded once. He studied her. "You don't look like a monster to me." That simple sentence caused a ripple through the watching crowd. People peeked through curtains, whispered behind doors. He didn't care. He reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of bread, then a flask. He offered it through the bars. The alien girl took it carefully, like a wild animal. Unsure if kindness was a trap. As she ate slowly, he sat beside the cage in the snow. Hours passed. He didn't leave. When the guard finally came, confused and annoyed, he said, "You can't sit there all day, outsider." The man stood. "Why is she here?" "She's dangerous." "What did she do?" She exists," the guard replied, unable to name a single crime. The man looked back at the girl. She looked away, ashamed. "I'm taking her," he said. The guard laughed. "She's not a pet. You can't just—" "I'm not asking," the man replied, his voice suddenly different, cold, sharp. "I fought in the Eastern Wars. I've seen true monsters. She's not one of them. You'll let her go." The guard stared at him, suddenly unsure. This wasn't just a traveler. This was someone trained, someone dangerous. Inside the cage, the girl looked up again. Her hands still gripped the cloak like it was her last piece of hope. The man turned to her. "Come with me," he said softly. For the first time in weeks, her lips curved, just a little. A flicker of emotion passed across her face. Not a smile, but the beginning of something like it. He pulled out a small metal tool from his belt. The lock was old and rusty. It clicked open with a few twists. The door creaked as he pushed it aside. No one moved. The alien girl crawled forward, past the open door, then slowly stood beside him. She was taller than he expected, thinner, but there was strength in her eyes now. They walked away together, through the silent snow. And not a single soul stopped them. The cage stood empty, cold, and alone. They didn't speak for a long time after leaving the village. The wind was strong, and snowflakes stung their faces. The path led into the frozen forest where the trees stood like silent guards. The man walked ahead, checking every step. The alien girl followed closely, her bare feet sinking into the snow. She still wore torn clothes, but his heavy cloak wrapped around her body and gave her just enough warmth to keep moving. He would look back now and then, making sure she was still with him. She never spoke, but her eyes never left him. After an hour, they stopped at a small wooden shelter built between two hills. It looked abandoned, but the roof held, and there was firewood inside. He opened the door and stepped aside, letting her enter first. She paused at the doorframe, unsure. Her kind didn't know this gesture. Back on her world, there were no doors. No waiting, no invitation. She slowly stepped inside. The man quickly lit a fire. Warmth spread through the small space. He placed a blanket on the floor, gave her a small water pouch, and started to heat something in a metal pot. She sat near the fire, not too close. Her hands hovered above the flames, as if she was afraid to touch the heat. He watched her in silence. She was different, yes, but not scary. Her eyes were sharp, but not cruel. Her silence was not cold, it was tired. "My name is Eli," he finally said, stirring the pot. "I used to be a soldier. Fought many wars. Then I got tired of it all." The girl looked at him, her head tilting slightly. "I don't know your name," Eli added, "but I think you've been through more than I can imagine." She stared at the fire. Then slowly, in a soft voice that sounded like music, she spoke. "Naren." Eli smiled. "Naren," he repeated. "That's a strong name." She nodded once. "Means light. From pain." He said nothing, but the name made sense. They ate in silence. The stew was simple, but Naren ate slowly, tasting each bite like it was the first real food in years. Later, when the fire was low and the cold returned, Naren curled into a corner, wrapping the blanket around herself. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but memory. Eli stayed awake, sitting near the door with his knife close. Not because of her, but because of what might come. He knew that people from the village might talk, someone might follow. And if they did, they wouldn't come with kind words. In the darkness, Naren's voice surprised him. "They burned my pod. Killed the others." She whispered. Eli turned. "You came with others?" She nodded. "6 of us. We crashed during escape. From a war, far stars away." He moved closer. "Why did they lock you up?" "Because I looked wrong. They saw my skin, my ears, and thought I was danger." Eli nodded slowly. "Humans fear what they don't understand. But not all of us are like that." Naren looked at him with tired eyes. "You are different," he shrugged. "I've seen worse monsters in human form." Suddenly, there was a soft noise outside. A crunch of snow. Eli stood, knife ready. Naren sat up, alert. Her body tensed. Eli opened the door just a crack. Outside, a man stood, one of the village guards, not the one from earlier. This one had a rifle. "We're not here to fight," the guard said quickly. "But people are scared. They say you've taken the alien." "She's not a prisoner," Eli said calmly. "Doesn't matter," the guard replied. "The elders sent me. They want her gone, or worse." Eli stepped out fully. "She's with me now. Tell the elders that if they come again, I won't be so polite." The guard backed away. He wasn't ready for a fight. Not with someone like Eli. Eli watched him vanish into the snow. Then he returned inside, closing the door firmly. "They'll come back," Naren said. "I know," he replied. "But next time, I won't just talk." She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. For the first time, there was trust in her face. The next morning came with bitter cold and soft light from the rising sun. Snow covered the ground again, hiding any tracks from the night before. Inside the shelter, the fire had died, but the warmth still clung to the walls. Naren was already awake. She sat near the door, watching the light filter through cracks. Her eyes stayed sharp, alert like a hunter, but calm. She looked different now, not like a prisoner. More like someone waiting to act. Eli stretched and sat up. His muscles ached, but his mind was clear. He had made a choice yesterday, and there was no turning back. They'll come again, Naren said quietly. I know, Eli replied. He started packing supplies into his bag. We can't stay here. If we move fast, we can reach the next valley. There's an old outpost, still safe, I think, Naren nodded. She stood without complaint, pulling his cloak tighter around herself. As they stepped outside, the snow crunched beneath their feet. The wind was soft but carried a warning. Behind them, the village lay far back, quiet for now. But Eli knew how fear worked. It didn't sleep. It didn't forget. And soon, it would chase them. They moved through the trees, fast and careful. Narene's steps were silent. She moved like she was part of the forest. Birds flew overhead, sensing their presence, but nothing else stirred. By midday, they reached a frozen stream. Eli paused, kneeling to fill their flask. Suddenly, Naren stopped walking, her head tilted to the side. Her ears twitched. Eli looked up. What is it? She pointed to the trees. A flash of movement. Then silence. Eli reached for his knife. How? Many? 3, she said. Spread wide, moving slow. Hunters. Not wild ones trained. He could feel it now too. The forest had gone quiet in a strange way. Can you fight? He asked. She looked at him with a firm nod. Yes. They backed toward the rocks. Eli pulled out a flare from his belt and snapped it. Smoke hissed up into the air. Not a call for help, but a warning he wasn't alone anymore. The first shot came from behind a tree. It missed. Naren dropped low, her body moving like water. She dashed forward, disappearing behind brush. Eli threw a stone to distract, then circled around. He spotted one of the hunters, a man from the village, rifle in hand, looking nervous. Go home, Eli shouted. You're protecting a threat, the man answered. She's not one of us. She's done nothing wrong. The man raised his weapon. But before he could fire, a blur of motion came from behind. Naren leapt from the shadows and slammed into him, knocking him down. She didn't kill him, just removed the weapon and vanished again. Eli ran toward her. We have to move. They sprinted through the forest. Behind them, shouts came from the other hunters. More bullets flew, but none hit their mark. They reached the cliffs by sunset. The outpost was there, a stone ruin, half broken but strong enough to hold for the night. Eli pushed the door open, and they rushed inside. He blocked it with fallen beams and rocks. Naren stood at the window, watching for movement. You were fast, he said, catching his breath. I was trained, she answered. Before the fall, Eli leaned back against the wall. They're scared of you. Because you're stronger, smarter, different. Naren turned to him. They don't want different. No, but that's why they need it. The fire inside the outpost was weak, but it brought them peace. Outside, the wind howled louder. The hunters had vanished, but Eli knew this wasn't the end. Tomorrow we leave this world, he said. Narene's eyes widened. Off-world? There's a port 2 valleys over. I have a friend. Smuggler. He owes me a favor. You would risk that? For me? Eli smiled. I didn't come this far to stop halfway. Naren stepped closer. Her voice was soft but steady. I was ready to die in that cage. I had nothing left. Now you do, he said. You have a path, you have a name. You have someone who sees you. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she whispered, and you have me. In the silence of the falling snow, they sat together. Strangers no longer. The morning was gray, and snow had buried their tracks again. Inside the ruined outpost, Eli carefully packed supplies. Naren stood near the broken window, scanning the distant trees. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. She hadn't slept. They won't wait long, she said. I know, Eli answered. We move now. He gave her a second layer of clothes, thick, worn human gear. It didn't fit perfectly, but it was warm. She didn't complain. Every hour they stayed made things more dangerous. Eli led them through a narrow mountain path. The wind was harsh. The trail was steep and covered in ice. More than once, he had to help Naren climb. Her steps were steady, but the cold still bit at her fingers. They didn't speak much. But when they reached the peak, the view stopped them both. Below the ridge, a sea of white valleys stretched far and wide. Forests, rivers, scattered ruins. And far in the distance, a dark shape, smooth and tall. The spaceport. Naren stared at it in silence. We can make it, if we don't slow down. By midday, they crossed into the second valley. The sun broke through for a moment, casting golden light on the frozen world. For a moment, it didn't feel like running. It felt like hope. But the moment didn't last. They heard the sound before they saw them. Engines. Small hovercrafts. 3 of them. Eli grabbed Naren's hand. Down! They dove behind a rock ledge. The crafts passed overhead, slow and scanning. Villagers must have reported them missing. The hunters were better prepared now. One of the hovercrafts stopped and circled back. Eli cursed under his breath. He pulled a small EMP spike from his belt, a last resort tool. He looked at Naren. We'll split. I'll distract them. No. You're faster, lighter. You can make it to the port. She held his wrist. I didn't survive just to lose the one person who didn't see me as a thing. He hesitated, then nodded. Then we moved together, no matter what. The craft dropped lower. A searchlight cut through the trees. Eli threw the EMP spike toward a nearby ridge. A bright pulse flashed. The craft spun, lost power for a second, and crashed into the trees. Other 2 veered off, alarms ringing. That was their chance. They ran. Branches slapped their faces. Snow flew with every step. Eli's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Naren moved like the wind, pulling him when he stumbled. Behind them, soldiers shouted. Lights flashed. A blast hit a tree near them, exploding bark into shards. They kept running until they reached the river. It was frozen over, but thin in places. Eli stopped. We can't cross that, he said. We must. Naren took the lead, stepping onto the ice. Her weight barely touched it. Eli followed carefully. Cracks formed beneath him, halfway across. One of the soldiers spotted them. There, shots rang out. Ice shattered behind them. Water sprayed into the air. They ran the last few meters, reaching the other side, just before the ice broke fully. The soldiers didn't follow. Not yet. Eli collapsed behind a boulder, gasping. Naren knelt beside him, touching his arm. You're bleeding. I'm fine. But he wasn't. A cut on his leg was deep from falling earlier. Blood soaked his pants. We're close, he said. Another mile. Then the smuggler's spot. Naren ripped a strip from her sleeve and tied it around his wound. Her hands were quick, practiced. You've done this before, he said through pain. I was a healer, she said quietly. Before the war took everything. Eli gave a weak smile. Then I'm lucky you crashed on this world. They stood again, slower now but still moving. In the distance, the port tower blinked in. Red light. Naren helped Eli walk, one arm around his shoulder. Soldiers searched behind them, but the forest hid their trail again. As night fell, they saw it, an old cargo ship, hidden in a stone hangar. A figure waved from beside it. Eli whispered, That's him. Naren didn't reply, but her grip on him tightened. They were almost there. The smuggler's ship was hidden well, tucked inside the remains of an old mining tunnel built into the side of the cliff. The entrance was almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. The blinking tower light had been the only clue. Eli leaned on Naren as they reached the hangar. His leg was worse now. The bandage was soaked, and his steps were uneven, but his grip stayed firm. That the man who waited for them looked surprised to see two people instead of one. He was tall, rough-faced, and wore a long coat full of pockets. His ship behind him looked old, but solid. "Eli," the smuggler said, stepping forward. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet," Eli replied with a tired smile. "I need a lift, off-world, quiet." The smuggler's eyes moved to Naren. "That her?" "She's not cargo," Eli said. "She's coming with me." The smuggler frowned. "You've got the whole region after you. I've heard the chatter. They're saying you stole a monster." "She's not a monster." Naren stayed quiet, her eyes calm but alert. She didn't trust him, not yet. The smuggler looked at her again. "She looks different." "She's alive," Eli said sharply. "And that's all that matters," the smuggler sighed. "I've got room. But the launch is loud. Anyone nearby will hear it." "Then we go now," the smuggler nodded. "Start loading in. I'll prep the engines." Naren helped Eli up the ramp into the ship. Inside, it was cramped but warmer. The floors were metal, the lights dim. She placed him on a bench near the Thea. Back and checked his wound again. Eli winced. "We made it." "Almost. You need rest," she whispered. He gave a weak smile. "I'll rest when we're among the stars." Outside, the engines powered up. A deep hum filled the air. Steam rose from the vents, and lights blinked to life. Then a voice shouted from the entrance, "Stop! Step away from the ship." Eli sat up. "No." Naren looked through the small window. Soldiers, at least 5. And the same guard from the village, the one who'd spoken to Eli before, stood in front, holding a plasma rifle. The smuggler cursed. "They tracked us. Get her out," Eli said quickly. "Leave me if you have to." "No," Naren said. "I'm not leaving you." The smuggler shouted back to the guards, stalling them. "Just loading supplies, don't shoot." The guard yelled back, "Hand over the alien." "The human too, if you care about your life," Naren stood. Her body was shaking, not with fear but fury. "They'll never stop," she whispered. Eli looked into her eyes. "Then we stop them." She turned to the smuggler. "Is there a back hatch?" He pointed. "Emergency ladder, under the tool panel." Eli forced himself up. "Go through it. Circle around." Naren shook her head. "I'm not hiding. You're not. You're ending this." With silent focus, she climbed through the hatch and vanished into the shadows. Eli limped down the ramp, hands raised. "You don't have to do this," he said to the guard. "She's a threat," the guard said. "You should have never taken her. I saw what she really is." "Have you?" Before the guard could reply, a sudden blur moved behind them. Naren struck fast using speed, not strength. One soldier fell instantly. The others turned confused. She disarmed the second with a twist, spun, and kicked the third into the snow. The guard raised his rifle, but Eli stepped forward. "Don't." But the shot fired. It missed Naren. Hit Eli in the shoulder. He dropped to one knee. Naren froze. Her eyes turned bright, glowing hot like fire. She screamed not in pain, but in rage. She leapt toward the guard, but just before she struck, she stopped. Inches from his face. The guard stared, terrified. "You're the real monster," she said quietly. Then she turned and ran to Eli. She dropped beside him. His face was pale, but he was alive. "You held back," he whispered. "I chose not to become what they feared." The smuggler helped them both inside. The engines roared. This time they didn't stop. The ship rose into the air, the stars above waiting. They were almost free. The ship soared through the upper atmosphere, shaking as it broke the clouds. The sky turned dark, stars blinking into view one by one. Inside the small cargo vessel, Eli lay still, breathing slowly. His shoulder was wrapped in fresh bandages, and Naren sat beside him, holding his hand. The smuggler flew the ship with Focus, adjusting old controls and muttering to himself. We've got patrol satellites ahead. I'll try to get us through the blind zone. Eli's eyes fluttered open. Did we make it? Naren smiled softly. We're above the sky. Now no more cages. Eli gave a weak laugh. You always knew how to say the right thing. The ship jerked slightly as it entered orbit. A soft alarm rang from the cockpit. We've got eyes on us, the smuggler called back. They're pinging for ID. Send them a fake manifest. Eli said weakly, Tell them you're hauling scrap. Already did, the smuggler replied. Let's hope they're lazy today. For a few tense minutes, no one spoke. Naren leaned closer to Eli, her hand pressed gently over his chest, feeling his heartbeat. You're safe now, she whispered. Because of you, I am too. Green light blinked on the ship's console. They bought it, the smuggler said, surprised. We're clear. Narene's eyes glistened, not with fear, but with something she hadn't felt in a long time, relief. They floated in orbit now. The stars all around them. Below, the planet looked peaceful. White clouds, blue oceans. But Naren knew better. That world had called her a monster. That world had caged her like an animal. She turned to Eli. Where now? He breathed deeply. There's a station not far, Freeport. No questions asked. We rest, we heal, then we choose our path. Together? He nodded, always. Later, when Eli slept, Naren walked to the viewport. She stared out at the endless sky. Her reflection looked back, still not human, still marked by pain, but stronger now. A voice came from behind. It was the smuggler. You're lucky he found you. No, Naren replied. I found him. He studied her carefully. You could have killed that guard back there. Why didn't you? She thought for a moment. Because killing him would have proved them right. The smuggler grinned. You're not what they say you are. No, she said. I'm more. They reached the Freeport station by night cycle. It was old, floating between moons, held together by years of repairs and secrets. But it had air, food, and shelter. Inside. Naren helped Eli to a resting unit. Medics came, no questions. Just treatment. She stayed by his side, never letting go of his hand. In the quiet that followed, as the hum of the station filled the air, Eli whispered to her, Do you still think you're alone? Naren looked at him. I don't feel alone anymore. His fingers squeezed hers. Then we've already won. Days passed. Eli healed slowly, but each day brought more strength. Naren walked the station's halls, learning about other species, other refugees. She wasn't the only one who had been judged for being different. One day, she returned to their small cabin with news. A ship is leaving tomorrow, heading far from this system. No governments, just free people building a new place. Eli smiled. Sounds like the perfect place for someone who doesn't fit. Then we'll go. He reached for her hand. You sure? Yes. She looked at him with glowing eyes. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to live. That night, they packed their few things. Not much, just what they needed. As they boarded the new ship, a young mechanic stared at Naren in surprise. Are you human? She paused, then smiled gently. No, but I'm not your enemy either. The boy nodded slowly. Okay then. And kinged. Just like that, the fear broke. A new beginning started, not with war, not with cages, but with choice. Eli and Naren stood at the edge of the docking bay, watching stars stretch before them. Once she had been called a monster. Now she was free, and this time no one would lock her away again.